Hi everyone, today I want to talk to you just very briefly about paper mache and using paper mache in our classroom. Paper mache, I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have already done paper mache. It's something, one of the earliest art forms we learn, when you're making globes as a child and things like that. There are all sorts of things you can use to make paper mache, but I use something really simple that I feel like makes a really strong sculpture. So we'll get into that here just in a little bit. But why would you choose paper mache? So for your next project and for some other projects coming up here, you can choose any medium. Why would you choose paper mache? A lot of people think paper mache is messy or um, always looks never looks neat and clean. And that's just not true. If you do paper mache correctly, it's very solid, strong material. And it's lightweight, it's not super heavy, it's very easy to use. It's one of my favorite media. So the thing about paper mache, first of all, is that it's flexible and forgiving. If you make a mistake, you just keep going over it, or you can tear it off and start over. It doesn't really, it's easy to make mistakes and to fix those mistakes with paper mache. The other thing is that you can create almost any form under the sun. Here we have some puffins that were created in this picture, but really lots of organic shapes are possible with paper mache because you create the armitage underneath out of anything and to create any shape. And then you just keep building on it until you get exactly the form that you want. When paper mache is done correctly, it's also very strong. It's so strong that you can knock on it especially if you use the adhesives that we use. The other thing is that you can create a smooth surface, but also a textured surface. Not every medium allows you to have such flexibility with your textures between smooth and rough and building off of that. So what do you need to start? Well, you need scraps of paper, okay? That's the first thing you will need. Now, the thing about paper, and especially newspaper, that you might not know is that it has a grain to it. So when you're using paper and you tear it like this, it tears in straight lines if you go one way, and if you go the other way, it doesn't. All right, it has a grain to it. So when you're tearing up newspaper, if you notice if you go one way, you get nice long straight strips. That means you're tearing it with the grain, okay? So that's just something really helpful to keep in mind to create like those long strips that you can wrap around and around and around, like you see in the picture up here. You're going to need a bucket that is slightly filled. You don't fill it all the way. You'll never use that much, but like this far, the most. And it's half Elmer's glue, half water. We use Elmer's glue wall, which is different than like school glue that you're used to. I use Elmer's glue at my house to literally glue just about everything. Okay, so that's what creates such a strong base for us. And I'm going to show you here in a second where to find that. The third is an armitage. That's like the skeleton of your piece. You can see this armitage right here in this picture is made out of masking tape. You can use newspaper that's twisted together. If you take newspaper and you twist it together to create like this, you can wrap masking tape around it to create arms and legs and all sorts of shapes. You can make balls of newspaper. I always think newspaper and masking tape make the best skeletons for your piece. But you can use really anything. You can use balloons, you can use chicken wire. If you're doing really large scale, chicken wire might be a good idea. You can use like toilet paper tubes and all sorts of things. Anything that paper will stick to and that is going to be lightweight and easy to attach to other pieces is going to work. If you look here, I have a photo of where you're going to find your materials. Let me find my mouse. This little box right here is what we call paper cement, which I will talk to you about just in a little bit. These are the buckets. They probably already have some glue and water in them. Usually the glue and water don't go bad, so we just keep adding to it and putting the lid on and saving it for the next person. Never pour it down the drain. Never. Also, in this part of the room, I have a little sign so you always know it's 1 part water, 1 part Elmer's glue, equal parts. All right. And I don't ever measure it. I just eyeball it and it's fine. Okay. And then I usually just mix it with my hand. You can see back here hiding, that's the glue bottle back there. And if that one runs out, just ask me. I always have more. I'll pull more out. Optional add-ons. Paper clay can be used to form three-dimensional solid shapes. So let's say you're creating an animal and you want to create just like little puffy cheeks or something like that. Paper clay is in that box that I just showed you, and you can build up on things. You can make little tiny ears. I wouldn't build up big ears, like that should be done in paper mache. But if you have like cheekbones or I don't know, like warts or something like that, or little bumps all over, or textures that you want to create, paper clay is great for that. The other thing is if you ever did paper mache with me in Art 1, you know that you can also use joint compound on top of the paper mache. I love joint compound because you can really create a super smooth texture. Nobody will even know that it's paper mache. You just put a thin coat over it, let it dry, sand it down, and keep going until you get the smooth and the surface that you really want for your project. And then after that, you can start painting it. Cleaning up. This is really important because every time class is over, you'll have to clean up after yourself. Or if you take the supplies home, you have to make sure you want to clean up correctly at home as well. Warm water and soap will clean your hands. Elmer's glue washes right off with warm water and soap. Be sure to wipe off the table multiple times. All right, so if you're doing paper mache and there's water and glue everywhere and you wipe it off with a rag one time or with a sponge, it's gonna look clean, but once it dries, it's gonna have that gross filmy stuff on it. Wash it off with a wet sponge, rinse out the wet sponge, wash it off again, rinse it out, maybe go get a dry rag, dry it off, over clean it, okay? Also, this is probably a no-brainer, but do not pour, oh, hang on. Do not pour glue water down the drain. Instead, like I said before, you should put a lid on it and you put it back on the shelf for the next person. All right, so there you have it. That's everything you need to know about paper macheing in this class. Paper mache dries fairly quickly as long as it's not like soaking wet. If you put one layer on, you can let it dry and by the next day it'll be dry. You can put more than one layer on at a time though. So if you put a layer on and it's still wet and you have more time in that moment, you can put another layer on right away. Another little hint of something I like to do is that I like to put a layer on with, like, let's say newspaper, and then my second layer I'll put on with scrap computer paper from the recycling bin. And that helps me to know where I've already put my second layer, okay? And then if I do a third layer, maybe I'll do it in another color of scrap paper from the recycling bin. You can really use any kind of paper to create your paper mache. All right. I can't wait to get started with you. And if you do choose to do the paper mache, I hope it goes well for you. Let me know if you have any questions.